Yeah, I watched Harley Quinn the animated series. A pretty silly comedy and parody of the Batman universe. It was entertaining enough though, and I kinda liked it. Anyway, I figured I'd rank my top 10 characters from the show. At the making of this video though, only 2 seasons are out, so that means only characters from season 2 are included. Anyway, here we go. Number 10, Harley Quinn. Yeah, I'm putting Harley herself on the bottom spot of the list. Kind of ironic. But hey, you should be happy I include her at all, given how tired of the character I am. I am also known for mainly just liking the original Harley Quinn from Batman the Animated Series, and not being a big fan of what's become of her in more recent years. But I have to say, this take on her wasn't that bad. She starts off as classic Harley, the Joker's obsessive girlfriend and henchwoman, but then breaks up with him and goes her own way. Kinda like the Birds of Prey movie, but a lot better. The rest of the show is basically about Harley trying to prove herself as a supervillain in her own right. That's a pretty interesting and fun direction to take the character in. Until of course she drops those plans and decides to just, vibe with Ivy. Yeah, she got pretty directionless and boring later in season 2. Up until that point, I thought she was handled pretty well, and her destructive and obsessive relationship with the Joker was also done really well. Number 9, the Junker. The Joker, Jinker. Did I ever tell you guys I was tired of the Junker? I have to admit, Jinker was pretty great on the show. He's not society man for once. He's a crazy murderous clown, like he's supposed to be. And the show does some really interesting things with him. I mean, would you believe it if I told you this stupid comedy show actually did an adaptation of the greatest Janker story of all time, Going Sane? Yeah, that actually happened. In season 2, Jonker loses his memory and becomes normal, living a normal, happy life in suburbia. I was not expecting that. And spoiler, even after coming back, he decides to retire and return to his normal, happy life. Wow. And in season 1, his obsessive relationship with Batman was handled really well. Yeah, I can't really complain about anything with the Jonker on the show. It was a damn great Jinker. So why am I not ranking him higher? Well, here's the thing. It's a great Jerker in a sea of great Jerkers. Not just a sea, but a vast sea. Seeing another great Jonker is just not that impressive. It's just more of the same. I'm tired of Junker. I'm bored with Joker. Even though he was great, I never got excited whenever he appeared on the show. I was more like, oh no, not him again. So, can't rank him higher. Number 8, TwoFace. TwoFace is basically the opposite of Jonker. He was pretty crappy on the show. Instead of making the character about duality and good versus evil, this show decided to take his name literally and made him two-faced. That's right, a phony double-crosser. That's certainly a valid way to portray him, and we've seen that a few times in the comics. It just isn't a very good way, nor is it compelling in the slightest. Two-Face is just an asshole on the show. Even before becoming a villain, he was two-faced as a DA as well. But here's the thing, I'm really starved for big Two-Face appearances. We almost never get them. He's usually either a minor character or left out entirely. In season 2 of this show though, he was actually a pretty major villain, the main villain even for a while. And all the crazy stuff that happened in the finale was because of him. He set those things in motion. Yeah, this Two-Face was a two-faced jerk through and through, but he was also a clever manipulator and a force to be reckoned with, and appeared quite a lot. So because I need more Two-Face and will basically take any Two-Face, I gotta rank him higher than he actually deserves. Number 7, Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze was oddly enough perfect on the show. Unlike Two-Face, Freeze was portrayed as a compelling and tragic character. It's basically the old Batman the Animated Series Freeze, but with a German accent and a terrible design. And of course told through a comedic lens. But even as funny as it gets, the show never forgets he's a tragic character. And spoiler, he got as great of an ending as he's ever going to get, sacrificing his own life to finally save and cure his wife Nora. The only reason I'm not ranking him higher is because he really just appeared in one single episode in a major role. Number 6. Bane. Bane was pretty damn lovable on this show. He is for some reason treated as a joke among the big villains. A big stupid brute who just wants to blow things up. All the other villains bully and abuse him. I don't know why. Where did the show creators get this from? Bane, a bully loser? I don't understand it. But I do have to admit that it somehow works really well. And you end up feeling really sorry for Bane and sympathizing with him. He is, oddly enough, one of the most likable and wholesome characters on the show. He's an underdog, and you just for once wants to see him treated right and taken seriously. His voice, a parody of Tom Hardy's Bane, was also fairly funny. I guess huge fans of Bane hate this version, I can easily see that. But I'm not really a huge fan of Bane, so I didn't mind this odd take at all. Number 5. Poison Ivy. The name of this cartoon is Harley Quinn, but it might as well have been Harley and Ivy. Ivy appears in almost every single episode and has almost as big of a role as Harley. At the end of the day, the show is about the relationship between these two characters. And yeah, for all you Harley and Ivy shippers out there, we finally got that in the end. I did enjoy Ivy quite a lot on this show. She has one of the most enjoyable personalities. Awkward, antisocial, sarcastic, and kinda neurotic. She hates humans and can barely stand being around them, except for Harley of course. She mainly enjoys the company of her plants. And very interestingly, she doesn't see herself as a villain at all, and doesn't like being lumped together with the rest of the Gotham rogues. She's not a bank robber after all. She only commits acts of eco-terrorism, only attacking institutions responsible for pollution. That's really the entire focus of this take on Ivy. Environmentalism and plant obsession. They didn't include her seductive femme fatale side at all. And to be honest, I couldn't picture this awkward Ivy ever seducing anyone anyway. But that's fine, each Ivy is different. This isn't Batman the Animated Series. Her appearing as much as she did on the show, I did get a bit tired of her in the end, and that's why I don't rank her higher. Number 4. Clayface. For some weird reason, Clayface was also portrayed as a loser on the show, just like Bane. But Clayface had it even worse, as he wasn't even part of the big boys. He was simply a goon. When Harley tries to prove herself as a solo supervillain, she gets herself a crew, and Clayface, a loser she finds in a bar, is part of this crew. That's right, Clayface is a Harley Quinn henchman. So why the hell am I putting him on the list, let alone at number 4? Well, because it was a really good portrayal. Clayface is often portrayed as a simple thug, a big brute who only cares about money. This show, however, actually remembered that he's an actor. In fact, being an actor is his entire shtick. Clayface playing different characters, either as part of Harley's schemes or simply for fun, is a running gag on the show. That's what he uses his shape-shifting powers for, not to form hammers out of his hands. In fact, he doesn't seem to like getting physical at all. All he wants to do is act. He does it pretty horribly too, which is the joke. If you're gonna do a comedic Clayface, play up his acting for laughs, which is exactly what this show did. It's pretty weird that a goofy sitcom understood Clayface better than most serious interpretations. Number 3. Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Gordon is usually a bit of a dull character. This is naturally because he's the most normal man in Gotham. He's the straight man of the Batman franchise. Well, not on this show. This Gordon is a complete nutcase. He's burnt out, his marriage is in ruins, he's insecure, he's gung-ho, he's an alcoholic, he's a filthy slob. Everything we don't associate with Commissioner Gordon. And man, did I love it. This is less Gordon and more like, what if Peter Griffin was a commissioner of Gotham? And why not? I mean, this is a crazy comedy show. Why not go completely nuts with some of the characters? It would be pretty boring and kinda pointless if you portray them the way they're usually portrayed. Harley Quinn was a great opportunity to play around with these old iconic characters, and Gordon is one of the best examples. He might also be the funniest character on the entire show. Number 2. Catwoman. Catwoman on the show was an entirely different beast than Gordon. Instead of taking the character in a completely different direction, with Catwoman the show instead just amped up all of her typical qualities. In other words, a perfect parody. She's super aloof, cool and confident, and a ridiculously skilled thief. It's Catwoman on crack. One of the funniest bits on the show is that Selina is so cool and aloof that Poison Ivy feels completely intimidated by her, and also starstruck. She kind of fangirls all over her in a really pathetic way. The voice work goes perfectly with the characterization too, as this is probably the most aloof and sultry sounding Catwoman ever. She hasn't made that many appearances on the show yet, but when she has appeared, she's completely stolen the show. I don't think she should appear too much, as that would take away from her awesome presence. It needs to be special when she does appear. And now for my favorite character of the show. Number 1, Kite Man. Yeah, it's not a joke, I'm being serious. Kite Man is my favorite character on the show. Now, don't get me wrong here, I still don't like Kite Man in general. He sucks in the comics, both the old classic version and the modern Tom King take. What King tried to do was to make him compelling and tragic. He looked at Kite Man seriously. You should never look at Kite Man seriously. This show thankfully got that, and instead played up the fact he's a silly loser. A silly loser who tries really hard to be cool, and in some way almost seems to believe that he is cool. A wannabe supervillain, kinda like Killer Moth. By the way, why the hell hasn't Killer Moth appeared on the show yet? He'd be perfect. Anyway, Kite Man is another example of an underdog, and as such, he automatically becomes likable. He's not a bad dude either, he's a pretty nice guy actually. His relationship with Ivy is also oddly touching, and who knew Kite Man was a good boyfriend? He was obviously a lot better for Ivy than crazy, irresponsible, destructive Harley. Kite Man kinda ended up being the breakout character from the show for me, which is really weird. Goes to show that there are ways to salvage even the worst of characters. Making them tragic or making them badass isn't always the answer though. Sometimes accepting just how bad they really are is the right way. There you have it, my 10 favorite characters from Harley Quinn the animated series. It's a silly comedy, don't take it too seriously. And remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.